2 months to the finish line, gentlemen. You ready? Let's get it on. The candidates participating in our debate tonight. The podium draw, by the way, took place earlier. To my far right, a man who needs no introduction, which is great. It saves us some time. Our second candidate, Mr. Kucinich. Allowed is how I could do that. Dennis Kucinich, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Kucinich served 16 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. Previously, Mr. Kucinich, a member of the Ohio Senate. And some of us actually remember at 31 years of age was the youngest mayor of a major American city, that city, of course, being Cleveland. His running mate is Akron City Councilwoman Tara Samples. To my immediate right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Justice William O'Neill, most recently serving as a justice on the Ohio Supreme Court, having been elected there in 2012. He earlier served a decade, 10 years, on the 11th District Court of Appeals. He earned a Bronze Star for service in Vietnam. That, sir, is my generation, and I thank you for that. His running mate is Chantel Lewis, Lorain County Elementary School principal and former East Cleveland City Council member. To my immediate left, Senator Joe Schiavone is here. He's a member of the Ohio Senate and former Senate Minority Leader. Raised on the south side of Youngstown, he practiced in the family law firm specializing in workers' compensation law. He was a Golden Gloves boxing champ, so if it all goes bad up here tonight, I'm going to tuck in right behind Senator Schiavone over here. Stephanie Dodd, a member of the Ohio Board of Education, is Senator Schiavone's running mate. Welcome, Senator Schiavone. To my far left, the right as you're watching at home, Richard Cordray is here. He comes from Grove City, Ohio. As you know, Mr. Cordray most recently served as the first ever director of the Federal Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He previously served here in our state as the Ohio Treasurer and the Ohio Secretary of State. His running mate is former congressional representative and Ohio House member Betty Sutton, native of Barberton. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Cordray right there. Our panelists here tonight, our Fox 36 News anchor Viviana Hurtado is here. Her running mate, co-anchor. So I'm in that running mate mode right now. It's a debate. Tim Miller is here, and also we welcome Wynn Everett, a member of the editorial staff of the Toledo Blade, Toledo's daily newspaper. The order in which our candidates are positioned and will answer questions was determined by a drawing. The panelists will direct their questions in order to those candidates. The candidates will have 60 seconds to answer. I'm going to ask you to please recognize our timekeeper and respect the debate's format. Now, candidates may rebut, but please follow me. I am looking for rebuttals, not just your answer to the original question. I mean, I have 4 Democrats on one stage. Viewers at home could say, oh, they're all Democrats. They probably are all the same. I'm looking for differences. I'm looking for separation from the original answer in your rebuttal. Absent that, we'll just simply move along to the next panelist and the next question. After several rounds of questions, we have a segment titled Jerry Free-for-All. My favorite segment. Actually, this is a free-flowing discussion debate, not unlike what you've seen or been part of on our Leading Edge show. We will have a round of closing statements, 60 seconds apiece. That order also determined by a drawing. We've had a lot of drawings here this afternoon, but we start with our opening statements determined by another drawing. Our opening statement is limited to 90 seconds, and we welcome Senator Joe Schiavone for 90, sir.
Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with everybody tonight. You know, as Jerry said, I grew up in the Mahoning Valley in the Youngstown area where I literally learned how to fight in a boxing ring. Then I went to law school. I became part of Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Started as a state senator where I learned how to stand up for people. And I'm running for governor because I'm sick of watching working families struggle. Ohio politicians have failed us. The Republicans are in power in the State House, and they're running through at lightning speed, passing legislation that is crushing to communities like Toledo. The establishment Democrats hadn't been able to win. On this stage, the 3 candidates other than me have a combined 100 years of political experience. It's time for a change. It's time we put somebody in the governor's office that understands people, cares about people, and knows how to get things done based on experience in the State House. Together, from community to community, we can get this done. I want to be able to drop my kids off at school in the morning and feel safe when I pull out of that parking lot. I want women and girls to feel safe from harassment in the workplace. And I want to make sure that every single person has the same opportunities, no matter where they're born or what their parents do for a living. Together we can do this. With a new generation of leadership, we can get this done.
That is
I would
time.
appreciate your vote on May 8th.
Senator, thank you so very, very much. Our next opening statement for up to 90 seconds, Justice O'Neill.
Good evening. I'm Bill O'Neill. As many of you know, I left the Supreme Court of Ohio about a month ago. Best job in America. I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army. I was awarded the Bronze Star in Vietnam. And I'm a retired registered nurse from a pediatric emergency department. Normal people would say that's enough. But a couple months ago, I had a phone conversation with my friend, Richard Cordray, and it did not go well. I told him, Rich, you've been gone a long time. We have a heroin crisis in Ohio that is killing 4,000 people a year. It's now up to 5,000. We have to build a network of hospitals to save those people. And Rich said, no. I said to him that night, you were wrong then, you're wrong now. I tried a second shot. I said, Rich, we've got to legalize marijuana in Ohio. It will reduce heroin deaths. It will reduce usage. It will generate $500 million to build our hospital network. He said no. I said, let's try one third time here. We have to release non-violent prisoners from prison. We'll save $100 million. Again, he said no. I said, Rich, you're my friend, brother. That's 3 strikes. You're out, and I'm in.
I'll be the umpire here tonight. Let's hear from Richard Cordray. Opening statement up to 90 seconds, sir.
My parents were true public servants. My mom was a teacher and a social worker. My dad, though legally blind, served people with disabilities his entire career. Their example inspired me. We know we can make a better Ohio. Betty Sutton and I are focused on the kitchen table issues, access to affordable health care, better education and training, more economic opportunity, and above all, jobs, better jobs. We will end the backward-looking one-party rule in Columbus. We stand for a tolerant and inclusive Ohio that will embrace the talents of everyone. We stand with the Me Too movement for an Ohio where women and men, jointly and equally, will lead our state forward. Betty and I will govern proudly on progressive principles. I've won statewide office twice as treasurer and attorney general and built a record of real results. We helped small businesses grow and create jobs. We helped thousands of people save their homes from foreclosure. We took on Wall Street and brought back $2 billion for Ohio retirees. We defended workers' rights. Elizabeth Warren recruited me, and President Obama appointed me to head the Consumer Bureau, where we took on the big banks and powerful interests. We fought Republicans in Congress, and we put back $12 billion that was wrongly taken from Americans back in people's pockets. Betty and I will set an example for America of how government can work not just for some of us, but for all of us. Please join us to fulfill this vision.
That is time. I thank you, Mr. Cordray. Our final opening statement. Final opening statement up to 90 seconds. Dennis Kucinich.
My fellow Ohioans, I'm Dennis Kucinich. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I grew up in the city of Cleveland, the oldest of 7, and my parents never owned a home. We were renters. And so we traveled from neighborhood to neighborhood as the family grew, looking for a place to rent. By the time I was 17, we lived in 21 different places, including a couple cars. I remember those days well, and I remember my parents in one apartment we lived at above 10712 St. Clair, sitting at a kitchen table, counting pennies to pay utility bills. I could hear the pennies drop then in my sleep, and I can hear them dropping now, people trying to make ends meet. This has informed my public service. This is where my passion is for representing people. Not just remembering where I came from, but this is who I am. Someone who will stand up and speak out on behalf of the people, for health care for all. Just like the bill I wrote in Congress, universal, single-payer, not-for-profit health care, for free college education for 2 years for Ohio's young people, for Ohioans having the opportunity to have clean water, and for Ohioans having the opportunity to have safe neighborhoods. And we begin with a ban on assault weapons, which I'm leading the way in this state towards. Thank you very much, and I look forward to this debate and to your support in the race for governor. Thank you.
Candidates, thank you also very much for your opening statements. Thank you also for respecting our clock. All right, so they have introduced themselves to each and every one of you, all of you watching across the state of Ohio. They have also begun to frame the issues as they see them. Up next, our panelists are good to go. They had a stack of questions this tall coming in, and based on that round, it should be about that tall. We're firing at the candidates when we come back right after this. Welcome back to the Ohio Democratic Party gubernatorial primary debate. We're at Bowser High School in Toledo. Our first round of questions now. Viviana Hurtado, your question goes to Dennis Kucinich.
Mr. Kucinich, today you released your marijuana platform calling out the, quote, disastrous war on drugs. What do you say to business owners in Northwest Ohio, many who tell me that they fear it would be an economic catastrophe, many who tell me they already struggle to fill positions because candidates fail drug tests?
In releasing my cannabis platform today, I recognize that the biggest problem in this state right now is opioid addiction, and we heard from patients testifying today that cannabis was a path for them to kick opioid addiction. We also heard from individuals who suffered from pain and found that the only relief they could find was through medical marijuana. I think that it's important for us to listen to the voice of the people and to have compassion for that, and to look at it as an opportunity for Ohio to move into the 21st century, not only with respect to medical practice, but also with respect to pain relief, because this is really the big issue right now in Ohio. And then if you can license it, there's also the opportunity to take the fees from that and put it into health care programs. That's something that I've agreed with Mr. O'Neill on.
All right, Mr. Kucinich, thank you. The Kucinich cannabis plan out there today. I was looking for differences. Justice, I saw you shaking your head no. Stand up.
No, I disagree. I agree with everything Dennis says, but we got to go further. Medical marijuana is currently legal in Ohio. I'm a registered nurse. Medical marijuana stops seizures for kids, and the Ohio General Assembly and the Ohio Governor's Office has made a terrible mess of it. So I'm saying what we need is an Ohio Department of Marijuana Control, just like liquor control. Just regulate it and get it out there. It is therapeutic. It's a good idea.
All right. Joe Schiavone has some thoughts on that. Now, I'm hearing, okay, pot stores like the liquor stores, and I don't know, the liquor store in Bowling Green's and the Kroger. I guess we're going to go to Kroger for pot.
The problem that we have to look for and that we have to work on is opioids. People are dying every single day. I'm the only one with a plan to actually address the problem. So we could talk about marijuana and we can talk about what we're going to do in the workplace, and that's very important. But every day, people are dying in our communities. And until we invest in education for kids, police force on the ground to do their jobs, and a real rehabilitation system where we're reconnecting families, we're just spinning our wheels.
All right. Anything from Mr. Cordery? Are you good with where we're at?
No, I have things to say.
And 30 seconds to do so.
First of all, we all have plans on opioids. It's a complex problem, and it's going to take serious work, and it's going to take a state and local government partnership to get on top of it and put that behind us, which is currently a crisis in Ohio that's been neglected by our state government for the last 7 years. On marijuana, we had a flawed proposal on the ballot recently, and it was voted down for both medical and recreational marijuana. We now have medical marijuana that has been approved by the legislature, but the administration has made a mess of it. Cronyism and everything else has gotten in the way. We need to implement that, and then we can turn and think about recreational marijuana.
That is time. We're going to figure out, we're going to come back to sometime in our round today what you think the administration has done wrong. But right now, Tim Miller is up with a question for Justice O'Neill.
Mr. O'Neill, you posted on Facebook in November In the last 50 years, I was sexually intimate with approximately 50 very attractive females. In the midst of the Me Too movement, even if those relationships were consensual, was that proper and appropriate from a candidate for governor? And should Ohio voters be concerned when you post something like that publicly?
I like the end of your question. No, they shouldn't be concerned. I've spent 15 years as a judge and a justice without any suggestion of impropriety. Was that post inappropriate? Of course it was. Did I immediately apologize for it? Of course I did. And I would suggest to you, if you look at my history, I've done a lot for civil rights in Ohio. I used to be a civil rights lawyer for the state of Ohio. So I guess the measure of the man that I would ask you to take, and everyone in this room, when you're wrong, you promptly admit it. I looked at that. It was a moment of anger. I lashed out. Shouldn't have done it. As an old guy, I learned a lot about the internet that day, but I immediately apologized. When you're wrong, you promptly admitted it. That's what I did.
All right, Justice, thank you so very much. Anybody else need to weigh in on the Justice's personal life? Are we good there?
Yes. No, I think
he said what he needed to say.
I have things to say.
I will hear from you for 30, sir.
I think that post was disgusting and inexcusable. It identified in detail Don't take away all my time for the clapping. It identified in detail 2 women, which is inexcusable without their consent. The Me Too movement is right in this country. We need to fix these problems so that women, like men, can go into the workplace and give their best and not be held back by Neanderthal harassing practices. Betty Sutton had a great proposal for state government and for businesses that do business with state government, and I embrace it. And I think men have to clean this up as well.
Right,
men have to get on other men to stop this.
Mr. Kucinich, 30 seconds.
The Me Too movement is a challenge for all men to be able to step up and understand the inner equality of all of us, men and women alike. And in doing that, we come to understand that the necessity that all of us have as men to respect women in every way, in the workplace, in our personal relationships. But I want to say that when an individual makes the transition and says, okay, I understand, I was wrong, that's an important moment. And every man that's out there who says that and recognizes he's wrong ought to be recognized for doing that.
All right.
Sin no more, avoid the near occasion.
That's time. Interesting point. I was wrong, screwed up on the internet, I apologize. Briefly, sir, Senator, briefly.
The thing about the internet and social media is once you say something, you cannot pull that back. Mm-hmm. You can take it down, you can say you apologize, but it's out there for everyone to see forever. So we have to all remember that actions speak louder than words, and when you do something, even though you apologize, you got to live with that. And in this case, I think that's what we're dealing with.
All right, we're going to say right here, incoming for Senator Schiavone. The next question comes from the Blades, Win Everett, right here.
Mr. Schiavone, any Democrat who wins the governor's race this year will have to contend with the General Assembly where Republicans have a big majority. How would you accomplish your agenda in a challenging environment like that?
This is my life. I mean, I've been the minority leader in the State House. I've been down there for 9 years working in the minority. Every time I drive my car from Youngstown down to Columbus, I'm thinking about how we can get things done for the people. People don't want you to just go down there and make arguments and fight with people. They want to see results. I currently have a piece of legislation that's co-sponsored with a Republican regarding broadband access for everybody. Another bill about clean water underground infrastructure rebuilds, co-sponsored with a Republican. Just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean that you can't get along with Republicans, but I will say that I have to fight a lot too. So when things come up and you get pushed, you got to push back, and I've done a lot of that. And as governor, I would never let a bill pass my desk that would hurt workers, that dealing with women's rights, dealing with abortion choice, dealing with issues that are important to people in my community and in the state. And so it's about working first, but fighting second.
All right, working first, fighting second. Joe Schiavone. The Republicans have supermajorities in both legislative chambers, Senate and House. Even if your party makes inroads, they likely will be, right? You agree, the Republicans will be in charge of the legislature. What are you going to do with that, Governor Kucinich?
Well, first of all, let me give you a clear example of what I've already done. When I was in the state Senate 22 years ago, there was a bill that was very important to me. I wanted to make it so that every city would have protection against these sports teams that are threatening to leave.
Right.
So what I did, I worked with the Republicans and actually passed a bill an amendment. It's ORC 9.67, which empowers cities. I got a unanimous vote from everybody in the Senate, including the Republicans. And frankly, I was one of 2 Democrats who was able to do it. I can work with Republicans to get things done, and I can prove it.
That's it for time. Thank you so very much. I think a big part of the issue is going to be Democrat executive, Republican legislative. That could lead to gridlock. You've been working in Washington. You know something about gridlock. Help us out.
Yeah, I've fought the Republicans in Washington for 6 long years. First, you have to know where you stand. When you know where you stand, you can decide when you can reach out and find common ground. We just did have common ground in the legislature on a fair redistricting plan, and I commend both sides of the aisle for addressing that. But you also have to stand and fight for principle when need be. And the most important thing we can do in Columbus is change the numbers. If we don't win this year, then everything we say on the stage tonight is just so much hot air, it doesn't mean a thing. We have to win this year.
That is time. That was strong. We'll bring that back around. It's just hot air if your side doesn't win. But if you do win, you still have a Republican-controlled legislature, Justice. What are you going to do?
Let's be honest. I'm one of 7 on the Ohio Supreme Court. I was the Democrat. I know how to work with other people. I'll tell you what sells is ideas. When I ran for the Supreme Court of Ohio, I changed the way we elect judges in Ohio by saying no money from nobody. I beat an incumbent who outspent me by $2 million. I know how to bring ideas. Ideas sell on both sides of the aisle. I'll even throw you a question. Why is it that there isn't a solar panel on top of every government building in Ohio? Why is that? It's a common sense idea. Nobody's doing it.
Thank you. That's time. Next round of questions. We're back to Viviana Hurtado, and it's incoming for Richard Cordray.
New campaign finance filings show you've raised $2 million. Of those, more than 200,000 fall under the category lawyers and lobbyists. Many of those contributions come from people directly connected to your work as the former head of the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We're talking about David Stevens, the CEO of the Mortgage Bankers Association, as well as Steve Straight, the CEO of Green Dot. Is this an example of what your critics say is business as usual for a career politician with deep ties to special interests?
No, it's not. I have never taken any positions because of any special interest group or lobbying group. The people who contributed in my campaign believe in me, and the people that were subject to the Consumer Bureau know that I was tough but fair in that position, and they think that having someone who's tough but fair as a governor would be a good thing for Ohio and would help us move forward and change the politics of this country. That's why a lot of people are interested in this race, and that's why they're interested in Rich Cordray. At the Consumer Bureau, we stood up to the special interests. Elizabeth Warren recruited me. Barack Obama appointed me to stand up to the most powerful interests in our society, the big banks and big financial companies. We took $12 billion away from them and gave it back to the American people because they had violated the law, because they had cheated and mistreated people. And that didn't make me popular in Washington, believe me. But to me, it was not about Washington. It was helping the people in this room, the people in Ohio, and the people across this country get a fair shake and have somebody stand on their side for a change.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Cordray. I'll remind everybody that the question was directed to Mr. Cordray about him taking campaign contributions. If we want to rebut, I want you to keep it within that framework. Stated differently, is he on the take? Go.
I'll tell you right now that the way that a campaign should be run is donations and contributions from hardworking Ohioans. And I've never been appointed by the president to anything. I don't know much about Washington, but I know that for the last year and a half, I've been traveling the state and meeting hardworking people that have been donating $50 a piece to my campaign because they believe in something real.
You're answering Viviana's question for yourself that was directed at Mr. Cordray. Are you suggesting, Senator Schiavone, that he has used financial contributions and have been improperly influenced by them?
I don't think he's been I don't think he has been influenced by them, but you have to look at who's donating to campaigns to make decisions about candidates.
Are we good? Can we move on?
No, we may not.
You're up, Justice. Go.
Richard, please. You show up, and 30 days later, you've got $2 million in the bank. You are Prince Richard of the Ohio Democratic Party. They have funneled that money to you. They've done it their whole life. You've got an A rating from the NRA. It is duplicitous for you to suggest you can take money from bankers and turn the other way. Duplicitous.
Panelists taking notes on that for our upcoming free-for-all round robin. Anything from Dennis? Can we move on? Thank you, sir, very much. Tim Miller, you have the next question. It's incoming. We're back around 2. Dennis Kucinich.
Mr. Kucinich, you have met with Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad several times. Some have even said that you praised him as highly loved by his people. In light of past atrocities committed by his regime, including recent attacks, the U.S. believes, killing women and children, do you regret getting close to Assad, or is there a reason why you feel it could move the situation forward when it is such a tragedy going on in Syria? Do you have any regrets for meeting with him over the years?
For the last 20 years, I've traveled the world, meeting with all kinds of people with whom I have fundamental disagreements in the cause of peace. That's what I'm known for. I think that if you want to work for peace in the world, you have to be ready to meet with anyone. You have to be ready to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And this I have done relentlessly in trying to take our country in a new direction, away from wars, using the resources back home. So yes, I've met with many people who might be found objectionable. But I've always done that, following the polar star of creating peace so that our sons and daughters don't have to go into foreign lands and put their lives on the line, and so that the American taxpayers don't have to spend the treasure of this country on these foreign adventures. Yes, I will go and meet with people, regardless of whether I agree with them or not.
Thank you, Mr. Kucinich. Appreciate that very, very much. So, if there's a rebuttal, it better be along the lines of, we think Dennis Kucinich is too chummy with Bashar al-Assad. Do we have that or not?
Yes.
Go.
There's no excuse for meeting with a guy that is poisoning kids in his country as a Fox News commentator.
Anything from you, Justice? We're good? We're good, Richard?
Yeah.
Briefly, sir?
I do. Dennis has pursued many causes, foreign policy and otherwise. What I objected to was that when I was working with President Obama to defend consumers, Dennis called for his impeachment and wanted him to be taken out of office. I thought that was wrong at the time. I think it's wrong now, and I disagree with it fundamentally.
We'll bring that back around in our free-for-all. I have a question on that myself. Next round of questions. Win Everett, you're going to be up first. Of course, Win writes for the editorial board down at the Blade, and your question is for Justice O'Neill.
Mr. O'Neill, the Ohio Democratic Party has said that your pattern of financial and ethical challenges and highly inflammatory and insensitive remarks on social media have made your candidacy not viable. If they're getting something wrong about your campaign, what is it?
Oh, this goes back years. This goes back years. Let's be honest about this. The leadership of the Ohio Democratic Party does not like me, and I welcome their dislike. I look at their record of losing at the statewide level. When I ran for the Supreme Court of Ohio in 2012, they went out and they recruited a candidate to run against me, even though I was an incumbent judge. They funded that candidate, and I won in 87 out of 88 counties. I've only, go ahead, you can clap, it's fine. I've only lost one statewide primary. I lost to Dick Celeste in '74. Ever since then, I win Democratic primaries because I bring integrity and ideas to the table. And you know, for the Democratic Party to finance Richard Cordray for $2 million in the first quarter to try and stop me is a compliment. I look forward to the fight.
I cannot order up a rebuttal, but I also want to ask, do you have a rebuttal? Do you have $2 million from the Democratic Party in 2 months?
I do. First of all,
you do?
No. Okay. I have gotten no money from the Ohio Democratic Party. Many of the things you've said about me tonight, Bill, are off base and completely false. We can get to those in time. What I will say is that all 4 of these candidates are on this stage to engage in a public and spirited debate, to answer your questions and tell you where we stand. That is in contrast to the Republicans, who so far have had no debates in their governor's race, and it looks like they're not going to have any. So if you want voters to have a choice and voters to understand where candidates stand, the Democratic Party is on the right side of this.
Am I allowed to respond to that?
No, we're out of time now. Hang on, we'll have time later on. We too think they should be debating. We have reached out, we've invited, and so far, as of 2 days ago, hadn't gotten a call back.